Revenge films.
I wasn't a very mentally strong person. I suffered from PTSD and mental instability, and I really didn't do well in social situations. And that's why it was terrifying for me to go to my husband, Thomas's family, where they had a lot of customs to abide by. However, my husband didn't understand. He would say things like,
"As long as you go over and over again, you'll get used to it, and it won't be scary anymore."
or,
"You need to hurry up and learn my mom's flavors, so that she doesn't have to keep teaching you.
and,
This is what it means to be married, so you just need to grow up and tolerate it."
And he didn't have any empathy. If my mother-in-law was a kind person, then perhaps it would have been better. But unfortunately, my mother-in-law seemed to not really care about me. And on top of that, she was a difficult perfectionist. For example, when she made me hang up the laundry for my brother-in-law's family, she would check every single item that was in the wash, and more than once, she would make me redo the entire load of laundry. It would be one thing for her to be less picky with me if we were living together, but I couldn't understand why. Every single time that we'd go over and visit the family house, she'd make me do laundry or do the cleaning. I also couldn't understand why she was making me do it all by myself instead of asking my nieces and nephews who were just lazing in the living room to help out a little bit. When I tried to talk to my husband about it, he wouldn't take my side.
But you're my wife after all, and the more that you do around here, the more that everybody will like you and think better of you.
And because it was only a couple of hours while I was at their house, I did the best I could that I was told. But then one day, my husband said that we were going over to the family house again. I said I didn't want to go, but then he forced me into the car while we were driving to the family house. I saw some posters around time for fireworks festival that evening, and I had a really bad feeling come over me. Actually, ever since I was a little kid, the sound of fireworks was absolutely terrifying for me, and it was extremely traumatic. Of course, my husband should know that better than anybody, but as soon as we arrived at the family house, it was already decided that we would be going to the fireworks festival. Not only that, but I was told to look after my brother-in-law's child. I was furious, and I pulled my husband aside to talk to him about it, but he only snapped back at me.
Oh, come on, stop making such a big deal out of it. I want my little brother and his wife to feel their excitement of being newlyweds again.
For the record, my brother-in-law and his wife were clearly still all over each other, and not only that, but their son wasn't disciplined at all, and calling him a little monster was generous, because he was so poorly behaved and out of control. Even though I told my husband over and over again that I didn't want to go to the fireworks festival, he kept saying that it would be fine. It was an opportunity for me to get over my trauma, and he simply left me to fend for myself. And not only that, but as soon as the fireworks started, my husband didn't pay any attention to his nephew at all. Instead, he was just having a drink and enjoying watching the fireworks with the rest of the family. During the time, I was shaking from fear out of the sound of the fireworks while also trying to look after my devil of a nephew. He wouldn't listen to a single thing that I said, and he was going around and stealing food from other people or even stealing food from the food stalls, and I was left trying to apologize to all the adults. But when I tried to scold him about it, he would throw a tantrum and he started punching and kicking me all over. And that night, when the fireworks festival was finished and we had gotten home, my brother-in-law and his wife asked their son how their day was, and then the devil nephew told them that I was yelling at him the whole time, so in turn, they became angry with me.
Hey, Jennifer, why can't you look after a kid properly? If something was gonna happen to a sweet boy, you know it's gonna be your fault. If you can't even look after him for a couple hours like this, there's no way that you're going to be able to have kids of your own.
I couldn't believe that I wasn't even getting one single word of thanks. Instead, I was being forced to look after a child, even though I didn't want to. And I was being yelled at for it. I was so furious that I couldn't bear to stand it. After that, I was going through so much shock that I couldn't even remember how I got home. That night, I got over a fever of 100 degrees, and I was stuck in bed, and yet...
I can't believe that you would get a fever over just the noise of fireworks. You're seriously so weak. Why can't you be stronger? Can't be that hard.
That was his reaction, and at this very moment, I felt like everything around me has been boiling inside of me blew over the lid, and that was when I finally realized I couldn't take this anymore. That night, I'd spent the entire night suffering from the high fever, but when the morning came around, my fever was gone, and so I immediately packed up all my belongings and I left the house. It was still early and my husband wasn't awake yet. When I left the house, I headed straight to my home. My mother was shocked to see me so early in the morning, with so much luggage with me, and so she called the father as well. Now that I was home, I told my mother everything that had happened to me until then. Of course, about the fireworks festival, but also everything that I went through every single time that I'd have to visit my in-laws' house. For example, I had asthma and I had to go over to the house with my breathing wasn't great, and my mother-in-law told me that I had to go clean outside, then my asthma wouldn't be healed, and then she demanded that I go into the storage room and clean, and there was so much dust there that I couldn't breathe anymore and collapsed. That day, I had been carried to the ambulance at the hospital and was hospitalized for a couple of hours. However, when my husband came to visit me at the hospital, he said,
Why are you so weak? You need to try harder.
By that time, my dad was standing next to my mom and listening, and he started shaking with anger. He told me that I didn't need to go back to my house with my husband anymore. Normally, my father wasn't the type of person to get angry, but I think that incident with the fireworks and the incident of triggering my asthma was the reason why he was so angry. When I was younger, because of my asthma, I had to go to the hospital in an ambulance a number of times. There were instances where it nearly took my life. Even to this day, my parents worry about my asthma. As for the fireworks, when I was a little girl, one of the older cousins was trying to play a prank on me, and he lit a firework right next to my ears, causing severe burns on my body. It took a while for me to regain the hearing in my ear, and because I had a firework so close, I became terrified of them. That's why when Thomas proposed to me, I went to meet my parents. They had warned my husband to especially be careful of fireworks, knowing that there are fireworks festivals every year, but it seemed that my husband never took it seriously and never thought the fireworks as a big deal. As I was explaining all of it to my parents, my husband must have woken up and realized that I wasn't home, and he was calling me. So I picked up and told him that I was back home with my parents rethinking our marriage. But then my husband was pissed off, saying that what was there to think about when it came to our marriage? And he started pressuring me and demanded that I hurry up and come back home. As soon as I hung up the phone, my mom and dad looked at me and asked me what I was planning to do. I could tell that both of my parents were furious, but because it was a marriage, I knew that they were going to respect my opinion and let me make the decision for myself. That's why I decided to take a couple of days to really think about it for myself. During that time, my husband contacted me multiple times. Apparently, while my mother-in-law was looking after her grandchildren, she threw out her back, and so my husband demanded that I hurry up and come home so that I could help out with the chores around the house and clean up after them. I couldn't believe that my husband really didn't understand why I was back home with my parents, and I was over it. But then my husband continued that because my mother-in-law had been disciplining me all the time, that's the only reason why I was useful nowadays. And he told me that it was pointless if I didn't help them out now. That was when I made my decision. And then I told my parents that I was going to be divorced from Thomas. They told me that they would help me hire a lawyer, and so I took their help. Either way, I'd have to go home once to at least gather my belongings, and I needed to discuss further with my husband. And so I went home. My husband was at work, and so I called the moving company and asked to take everything that was mine within a day. And then, that evening, my husband came home from work. As soon as he saw my face, he lit up.
So, do you finally understand? You better get to my mom's house first thing tomorrow morning and help her.
There's no need for that, Thomas, because I'm going to get a divorce from you. I've already taken everything out of my personal belongings, and by the end of this month, I'm going to be rid of this apartment.
What?
You didn't hear me? I said that I'm going to get a divorce from you. I've had enough of being thrown around by you and your family, and what happiness am I going to find being with a husband who refuses to show any care towards me? That's why we're getting a divorce.
Wait a minute, Jennifer. But you said that you were going to try, didn't you? And we spoke about this, that as long as you try harder, eventually, my mom will acknowledge and accept you.
Why should I have to continue being treated like this and bullied like this, just to have your mother accept me? By the way that she treats me, she's never going to acknowledge me as part of the family. I've already moved all of my belongings from the apartment, so you better arrange to have your stuff moved out too.
But why?
Did you forget? This apartment belongs to my father. And also, did you forget that your car that you drive also belongs to my father? When I said that, all of my blood drained from my husband's face. My husband seemed to forget that when he got married, my father had purchased an apartment for us, and he also received the keys of the car that he wanted, which was my dad's car. Look, if they were good to me, I'd be happy to cater to them. Well, why should I have to cater to people who only bully me every single time? I can't stand it anymore. We're getting a divorce, and that's that. And after that, I never saw my husband ever again. I hired a lawyer and went through with the divorce. Of course, I collected an apartment and the car and everything else that was mine. On top of that, the job that my husband had was thanks to my dad's introduction. When my father told them about the divorce and the reason behind it, the company immediately relegated Thomas, who was pretty useless to begin with. Even after telling me to cater to his family, he was the only one benefiting so much from my father's help. It seemed that he finally understood, and every single day he was trying to send me messages, but I ignored them all. Because of the help from my father, he was able to save more money for his salary and send money back to his parents. But now that that was gone, I heard that their family finances are on fire and that they are living their lives in debt. Seriously, take that!
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.